All right. Well, I guess we will. We'll go ahead and get started. Um, so last week I should have went last week because last week we had a few chapters. This week it covers a lot of information, so it's not all going to get covered. They didn't cover it all in here, but there was some of the stuff that they didn't cover in here that I really felt like we needed to talk about. So we're going to talk about it anyway. And so before we get started, I'll just go ahead and lead us in prayer, and then we'll get into it. Dear Lord, I just come to you this morning, thanking you for the morning that you've given us, the sunlight, thanking you for all these that are here. Lord, I just pray that you'd be with us throughout this service, Lord, and everything that is said or done here will be honoring and glorifying to you, Lord. I pray that there's nothing said that you don't want said, and whatever you want, that it is clear and put out there, Lord. Lord, just go with us through this lesson this morning and help us to take something from it. Thank you most of all for your son, Jesus. It's in his name I pray. Amen. Okay, so same memory verse from the past. We've got one more week, I think, of this memory verse, but it's Psalm 32:5. I acknowledge my sin unto thee, and mine iniquity have I not hid. I will confess my transgressions unto the Lord, and thou forgavest the iniquity of my sin. And so James, as I said last week, he did an excellent job. That might have been your best one yet, James. I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. But so I'm not going to take a lot of time recapping that because that was covered really well, and there's a lot to cover today. Um, but just a little word on it. So what happened through the lesson last week was that David sinned, and then he covered that with some more sin, and covered that with some more sin, and he piled it all up. And now we're going to see in this week what it cost him, and what it cost lots of other people that indirectly because of his sin. And he tried to keep it covered up, but the Lord brought it out and brought it to the light. So Nathan's prophecy against David that he gave last week in 2 Samuel 12:11 and 12, it says, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with the wives in the sight of the sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And that's going to happen this week. We're going to hear about that. But so our lesson doesn't actually start until over in chapter 14 or 15. 14. So I'm going to give you the quick synopsis of what happened in between this that we just talked about and before we get into our lesson. So the first example of the sword coming upon David's house for his sin with Bathsheba, it comes in chapter 13. And so we were talking about this week, Brother Saul and I, and how everyone was related, because David had several children, several concubines. His children he had through several wives, and we're going to meet a couple of them right here. First off, we're going to meet Absalom, And so Absalom was David's son through Maacah, and also Absalom's full blood sister was Tamar. So they were full blood brother and sister. And there's another brother from another wife, um, Amnon. That's from Ahinoam, was his mother. And so he and Tamar were brother and sister, but they had different mothers. But so everyone knows the story of what happened. Um, Amnon was in love with his half sister, and so there's this other guy who's David's nephew, and his name's Jonadab, and he thought it would be, let me give Amnon this great idea, and it was a terrible idea. It was very evil, and he did it, and so he coaxed her into coming in, and he raped her. We're gonna see Jonadab here a little bit later too. He's a part of something else, but so anyway, as soon as this sin had taken place, Amnon, who loved her so much before, he then hated her. He hated her more than he loved her before, and he put her out. And in this time, what he did to her, other than on top of the sin of raping her, was he pretty well kept her from being able to be given in marriage because of what had happened to her. So she was she had she was it was bad from several fronts as far as her and what was done to her. And so Absalom, her brother, is obviously very upset about this, and we're going to find out what happens with that here a little bit later. But the first thing, this is the first thing that's happened, and David finds out about it, but David does nothing. And Absalom took that and he put that back in his memory bank, and later he's going to take care of it himself. 2 years pass, and Absalom he's got a plan, and so um, they're they're going down to the sheep shears, and so after they're done for the day, they're going to eat and drink and be merry, and he tells his servants that when Amnon is good and drunk, I want you to go in there and kill him. So they do, and the report comes back to David through one of the servants that all of the sons have been killed, and he is distraught. And here comes good old Jonadab again to tell him, well, it's not that bad, really. Everything's okay. Only Amnon is dead. So he seems to always be around with some either really bad news or some really bad advice, one or the other. But, and then Absalom flees away because he knows that he's in big trouble now because it's known what happened. And he stays in Geshur for 3 years. And David is in mourning for Amnon. He's in mourning for Absalom. And all these things are coming back on him now because of this previous sin. But he's not brought him back yet. And the captain of the guard for the army, Joab, he's pretty concerned about the king's state of mind because David is in mourning. He can't think clearly, so he comes up with this good plan. He's going to have this happens a lot where somebody comes in and tells a story, same as Nathan when he came in and told this story to David, and David gets all upset, and he says, "You are that man." In this case, Joab has this woman come in and tell a story about two sons. One son killed the other, and then she is in mourning for both sons because she's afraid for the son who's still alive. And anyway, the long story short, he says, "You don't have to worry about that. Nobody's going to mess with that son." And then she says, "Well, how come you haven't brought your son back?" And immediately David, because he's wise and he has he has he has discernment from the Lord. He knows that this story has all come from Joab. So he asks her and tells her not to lie to him, and she says, "Yes, he has put me up to this." And so then that leads us to the first section that we're going to read today in chapter 14 of 2 Samuel. And it's verses 21 through 33. And the king said to Joab, "All right, I have granted this thing. Go therefore, bring back the young man Absalom." Then Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, "Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord, O king, in that the king has fulfilled the request of his servant." So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, "Let him return to his own house, but do not let him see my face." So Absalom returned to his own house, but did not see the king's face. Right there we'll stop and see that Joab is the one who orchestrated Absalom to come back. We want to keep that in our memory because that's going to come in to play here later on, because some things change between Joab's feelings towards Absalom, and ultimately it does not end well. But so then the thing to remember there is that although David lets Absalom come back, he says he can come back, but he's not to come see my face. He can only go to his own house. So we'll pick up in 25. Now in all Israel there was none who was praised as much as Absalom for his good looks. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, at the end of every year he cut it, because it was heavy on him. When he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels, according to the king's standard. To Absalom were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of beautiful appearance. And Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. So he said to his servants, "See, Joab's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire." And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom's house and said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" And Absalom answered Joab, "Look, I sent to you, saying, 'Come here, so that I may send you to the king to say, Why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to be there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, but if there is iniquity in me, let him execute me." So Joab went to the king and told him. And when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom. Okay? So Absalom is known for being the best looking. He's also very conniving. We're going to find that out here pretty quick. Um, and when he cut his hair at the end of the year, they say 200 shekels. I looked it up. I mean, it's Google, so who knows? But it said 5 or 6 pounds. I don't. That's a lot. I can imagine you need to get that cut. I don't have that issue, so yeah, I don't know, but that's a lot. That's a lot of weight to be holding with your neck. So um, that's that's crazy. Uh, and so after waiting 2 years from being brought back, he is he's sending for Joab to get him in to the king, and Joab is ignoring it because Joab's on to other things, and he knows what the king said, and he's not planning on bringing him back. And so he sets his field on fire, and I believe this is where things start to change in their relationship pretty quickly there. So he's got his attention, and he gets what he wants, and ultimately at the end of this section here, David kisses Absalom, so he is forgiven. Go ahead.
Setting the field on fire. We don't think much of it. We have brush fire, and we did.
Right.
But this was his income.
Mm-hmm.
This was agricultural days where that's don't do it.
No, they didn't. They didn't go down to the Circle M and eat after it was over. They had to eat of what they had in the field. You don't play with that. No, that was a very far stretch for him to go to get the attention. And it worked for him, so he was probably happy with it. But so we're about to find out how cunning and conniving Absalom is in our next section, which is the next chapter, chapter 15. So after this, it happened. This is starting in verse 1. After this, it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And he would say, "Your servant is from such and such a tribe in Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you." Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me, then I would give him justice." And so it was whenever anyone came near to bow down to him that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner, Absalom acted toward all Israel and acted toward all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So when I was reading this part, this sounds exactly like all the political figures that you see nowadays, because that's what they all do. You see, during election time, you're bombarded with text on your phone, commercials on TV about, "I'm here for you, I'm going to fight for you, these others are not going to fight for you, nobody cares about you but me." And that's what Absalom is doing. His campaign is right there at the gate, and he's telling everyone who will listen that you're right, they're doing you wrong. Let me be the king, and I'll take care of all this. I want to be the one who's in charge, and if I were in charge, it'd be better for you. And so he steals the hearts of these people, and they begin to sort of to follow him, and he's getting the allegiance of all these that are coming, that are supposed to be coming before the king. And then we'll pick up in verse 7. Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt at Geshur in Syria, saying, If the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said to him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gileonite, David's counselor, from his city, from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. So 40 years he's been working. He's been this is a long campaign because he's been going at it for 40 years and getting all the people that he could, and now he's about to put his plan into action. And so he's going to tell the spies that they need to say that Absalom reigns in Hebron. This is also where we meet Ahithophel, which James spoke about last week. And Ahithophel is a close counselor to David. He's one that hears from the Lord and one that the king goes to for advice. And for him to leave David is a big betrayal. And we're going to see what happens to him because of his betrayal. It does not work out well for him. So when Absalom is he's gotten to the point to where he's got lots of followers and he's about to put himself in power. And so now in verse 13, we're going to pick up again and see what happens next. So it says, Now a messenger came to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. So David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, Arise and let us flee, for we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servant said to the king, We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands. Then the king went out with all his household after him, but the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out with all the people after him and stopped at the outskirts. Then all his servants passed before him, and all the Cherethites and the Pelethites and all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, passed before the king. David ran for years and years and years and years from King Saul. And he hid in caves and wherever he could hide. And then, because of prosperity and because of complacency, he sinned, and now he's back on the run again. After all this, David is now back to fleeing from someone. And we're going to see the prophecy that Nathan gave is going to come to pass now because of these 10 concubines that were left behind. In between the text that the lesson gives us to read, there's some more things that happen. So Many, all of David's household went out with him, including Zadok and the Levites and the Ark of the Covenant. But David tells Zadok to take the ark back to Jerusalem because either he's going to find favor with the Lord or whoever is the king needs the ark. So he says, take it back. And he hopes that it's going to be him that's going to go back and he'll be able to see it again. But so also he tells Zadok that his son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan are going to listen, and whatever they hear, they're supposed to report to David. So they're gonna pretty well be kind of his eyes and ears in the kingdom, since he can't be there. And then he's told that his advisor Ahithophel has went over to Absalom's side, and David prays that his counsel will become foolishness. And he also sends one of his other advisors, Hushai, back. And Hushai is going to pretend to be with Absalom so that he can give advice that's contrary to what Ahithophel's giving, so that Ahithophel's guidance is not going to be listened to. So all this tangled web is continued to be weaved here. And as they travel, they encounter Shimei, and we all know the story about Shimei. He curses David. He throws rocks at David and his people that are along with him. And as he does this, Abishai comes up alongside and says, "Let me go cut this guy's head off. He can't be doing this." And David tells him to let Shimei be, because he knows that what Shimei is saying to him in cursing him is in large degree true, because he's brought this upon himself, and he hopes that it's going to somehow give him favor with the Lord for sparing Shimei. So they let him go, and they go on with what they're doing. And then as they travel along the way, Absalom begins to ask for advice. So first, the advice of Ahithophel. And this is where the prophecy that Nathan gave comes to pass here. Because his first advice to Absalom is to go into the concubines that are there, so that when it says it's done under the sun, they set up a tent on the roof, and everybody knows what's going on. And so that which was foretold by Nathan is done here in this case. And then Ahithophel goes on to give some more advice, and he says for Absalom to let him choose 12,000 men, and he'll go out and they will overtake them, but they'll only kill David, and they'll bring back all the rest of them. And Absalom likes the sound of that, but he also says, let's go ahead and ask Hushai what he thinks. So here comes Hushai, and they tell him what the advice is, and upon hearing the advice, he says that is not good at this time. He offers advice in contrary to Absalom, and his advice is that David and his men, they're mighty men, they're fighting men, their backs are against the wall, and you don't want to go in against that. He says, take all of Israel with you. Take as many as you can get and kill all of them. Well, that sounds even better to Absalom. So the advice of Hushai is taken over the advice of Ahithophel, which is exactly what David prayed for. And then Hushai warns David of what's coming. And he sends Jonathan and Ahimaaz. Those are the two that were sent, that were supposed to be listening and carrying the stories back and letting him know what's going on. Hushai sends them to David, and on the way they're hiding, and they stop at this woman's house, similar to the spies, and they're seen, and so Absalom is told about it, and he sends his servants out, and they're saying, "Where are these two guys?" And she lets them down in the well, and she says, "Well, they've gone on over the brook." So they go to look for them, and they can't find them, and she brings them up, and they go on and give the advice. They go on and give the news to David. Um, Meanwhile, Ahithophel, back to him, when he knew that his advice was not taken and not followed, he knew that that was it for him. So he goes home, he puts his house in order, and then he hangs himself. So the choice that he made in following Absalom led directly to his death, although he was not aware until it all came to pass. That's the way it usually happens. So then Absalom is going out to pursue David, and he makes Amasa his captain of the army. Amasa is one of David's nephews by his sister Abigail, and he's also a cousin of Joab. So, and he and Joab are going to have trouble later too, but we're not going to talk about that today. So then we're all the way over in chapter 18, and this is where we find out ultimately what happens to Absalom. Starting in verse 1. And David numbered the people who were with him, and set the captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. Now, back when David fled, there's a little short passage there where David tells Ittai, "You should go back to the city because you're just a foreigner with us, and you just got here, and now you're going to follow me. Just go back to the city; it'll be better for you." And he said, "I will follow the king. I'm going to go," and ultimately then he's placed in charge of 1/3 of the army or of the people anyway. And the king said to the people, I will also surely go out with you myself." So instead of staying behind like he did before, he's going to go this time. But the people answered, this is verse 3, "You shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor if half of us die, will they care about us? But you are worth 10,000 of us now, for you are now worth more help to us in the city." Then the king said to them, "Whatever seems best to you, I will do." So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. So they told him to stay. So he did not go out with them. And then verse 5. Now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So deal gently for my sake means do not kill him. Strict orders. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place there that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule, The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth. And the mule which was under him went on. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in the terebinth tree. So he was hanging by his head, by his hair, something. He had a lot of hair, so I mean, whatever happened, he was caught up there and he could not get out. The mule was gone, and he's left helpless, just hanging there. And in verse 11, so Joab said to the man who told him, You just saw him, and why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, Though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king commanded you, and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom, otherwise I would have dealt falsely against my own life. For there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me. So even this guy knows they're not supposed to do this. And he's telling Joab, so again, it's being reiterated. I wasn't going to do it. You could have given me way more than you offered me, and I wouldn't do it. Because if I had done it, you would have killed me. And then Joab said, this is 14, I cannot linger with you. And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods, and they laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime has taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. So even though he knows better, he's been told explicitly by the king, Joab goes and kills him. And then he has his 10 armor bearers come along and kill him a little better, even if that's not good enough. So that is the end for Absalom. He in his lifetime he did a lot of terrible things. He thought he was going to take the kingdom, and ultimately that did not happen. What we do see through all of this is, although David's sin is what has set this in motion, that the Lord is still with David. David repented of his sin, but these are the consequences. As is stated lots of times in lots of different ways, you can choose your choices, but you can't choose your consequences. These are the consequences. And even though Absalom spent most of his life trying to take what was his father's, he wanted to be the king. David is still distraught when he's told what happened. And then that causes a large rift between David and Joab, because Joab was doing what he was not supposed to do, and he doesn't understand why David's not happy, because he's a man of war. He's a man of, this is what he does. He kills people, and these warriors think about things a little differently. But And ultimately, when they go back and David is mourning over it, Joab comes to him and chastises him and tells him, like, we went out, we fought for you, and then now you're mourning over this son that we killed, and you're bringing shame upon all of us. So again, David repents, he gets up, and he goes back. But David is he's in a lot of turmoil, because obviously prosperity is not something that David enjoys. He's always in some sort of something that's mostly by his own doing. But so to finish this out, we jump way on over because I did not tell a story. It is literally 10 chapters between the start and the end. In 2 Samuel 24, we're going to read about another time that David sins, and this is David's census. Chapter 24 and verse 1. Again, the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, go, number Israel and Judah. So the king said to Joab, the commander of the army who was with him, now go throughout all the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and count the people, that I may know the number of the people. And Joab said to the king, now may the Lord your God add to the people 100 times more than they are, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord know? But why does my lord desire this thing? So here again, even Joab, even a servant knows that this is not what needs to be done. But in verse 4, nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab and against the captains of the army. Therefore Joab and the captains of the army went out from the presence of the king to count the people of Israel. And they crossed over the Jordan and camped in Aroer on the right side of the town, which is in the midst of the ravine of Gad, and toward Jazer. And they came to Gilead in the land of Tatim Hadshai, and they came to Dan John, and around to Sidon, and they came to the stronghold of Tyre, and to all the cities of the Hivites and the Canaanites. Then they went to the south Judah as far as Beersheba. So when they had gone through all the land, they came to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. And Joab gave the sum of the number of the people to the king, and they were in Israel 800,000 valiant men who drew the sword, and the men of Judah were 500,000 men. And David's heart condemned him, and after he had numbered the people. So David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done, but now I pray, O Lord, take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have done very foolishly. Now when David arose in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, saying, go and tell David, thus saith the Lord, I offer you 3 things. Choose one of them for yourself, that I may do it to you. So Gad came to David and told him, and he said to him, 7 years of famine come to you in the land? Or shall you flee 3 months before your enemies while they pursue you? Or shall there be 3 days plague in your land? Now consider and see what answer I should take back to him who sent me. And David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Please let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. But do not let me fall into the hand of man. So the Lord sent a plague upon Israel from the morning till the appointed time. From Dan to Beersheba, 70,000 men of the people died. And when the angel stretched out his hand over Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord relented from the destruction and said to the angel who was destroying the people, it is enough. Now restrain your hand. And the angel of the Lord was by the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. Then David spoke to the Lord when he saw the angel who was striking the people, and said, Surely I have sinned, I have done wickedly, but these sheep, what have they done? Let your hand, I pray, be against me and against my father's house. So David, in the end, he realized his sin, and he asked the Lord to put it all on him, and don't put it on these people, because they had nothing to do with it. Also, part of this, one of the ways that David sinned in Exodus 30 verse 12, it's talking about when you take a census. It tells these are the laws for when you take a census. When you take the census of the children of Israel for their number, that every man shall give a ransom to the Lord when you number them, that there may be no plague among them when you number them. And that didn't happen here. So he sinned against the Lord in the way that he did the census, even more, because the census wasn't needed. The Lord didn't ask for it, but again, these are just some more examples of things that have happened in David's life, and the sin, and then the consequences. Because in this case, 70,000 people lost their lives because of the fact that he wanted to see how many that there were. Now, why did he want to see how many there were? Maybe just for his own, to make him feel more strong or more powerful. I have this many, and he did have a lot, but 70,000 less after that. So anyway, this was a lot of information to cover today, and probably didn't get covered near as well as it should have. But it's just, I think it's important for us as we journey through this to to see what happens, because it was stated, and I've heard this many times, that it could be David, it could be Abraham, it could be that these guys were just like us, and in so many ways they are just like us. The only thing that separated David from Absalom or Saul or any of these other wicked people was that the Lord was with him the whole time. He had something that none of us could you couldn't ask for anything more than that. If the Lord is on your side, then that is the ultimate. You can do all sorts of things. You can sin in multiple ways, and the Lord ultimately, in David's case, blessed him. But for David, in every case, David does come back around and he repents, because he is a man after the Lord's own heart. He does repent, and he knows that in each case that he's done wrong, but it seems like way too late most times. So any comments or anything before we close?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So Absalom was David's son,
Correct.
and then Amnon was David's son, but they were different wives.
That is, so there was they had different mothers. According to, now, Ahinoam was one of the wives that David got back along the time of Nabal, and when Nabal died and he got Abigail, and it mentions her, it mentions Ahinoam, but this was just what I looked it up, and this is what it says, that Ahinoam was Amnon's mother. I don't have the exact verse about where that is, but and then Maacah is supposed is the mother of Absalom and Tamar.
Okay. And then in chapter 14, verse 27, it says, Absalom had a daughter named Tamar, so that was a different Tamar.
That was a different one. Yes. And I would assume, this is just my assumption. I have nothing to back this upon, but I would assume he did that because of what she went through and how much he loved her. That he named. I mean, that's just my opinion. But I know that happened. Of course, they're in this particular section. There's Jonathan. There are some names that overlap, but I mean, I don't know. I'm almost thankful that they have some names like Jonathan that overlap, because some of those other ones.
So Tamar was Absalom's full sister, or Amnon's full sister?
Absalom.
Wasn't Amnon ever from who died his son?
Well, he should have been. That's what that was a little confusing for me too, because he was born before Absalom. So I'm not.
So Absalom's getting rid of whoever defiled his sister, but he's also getting rid of the next. He's making
Twofold.
himself
Yeah,
next in line.
that's
to
true.
throne.
He's two birds with one stone there, I guess. But that's true. Anything else?
I sure like the one husband, one wife rule.
I tell you, it's very confusing. And yeah.
Well, you know, Nathan, when David said, "Well, that lamb will be," when he told him the story, he said, "That lamb will be restored fourfold."
Mhm.
And you think that baby died, Absalom died, Amnon died, Tamar was right,
Mhm.
you know, fourfold.
Mhm. You're right. There it is. All right. We need to dismiss so we can get somebody else up here. James, will you dismiss it?
Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, just thank you for this time we've had just to study a portion of your word, Father. Just thank you for Tony and his time spent preparing this lesson, Father. Just pray that you take it with us, Father. Just pray now you go with us as we go into our preaching hour and bring Brother Saul as he stands before us, Father. Just pray this